We're going to start our look at network monitoring with Syslog, and I know a couple of you are already thinking, Syslog? There's only so much to that. Well, there's a little more to it than you might think, and we're also going to tie this in with the importance of the correct time in your network. And I've also got one really helpful command at the very end of this video that's going to help you keep your log size down a bit, because one of the tricks with logging, configuring it is not all that hard. Going to be real honest with you. The commands we're looking at here are going to be some of the simplest you've ever seen. I'm going to give you a couple of little gotchas to watch out for on your exam, but that's really going to be it. In the real world, production networking, one challenge with the log is having the log have enough messages in it, keep it large enough so you can get information when you need it, but not to overwhelm yourself with it. Because even saying that reminds me of a place I used to work with Microsoft logs. And there was someone there who just insisted on keeping every single message of everything that had ever happened in the history of history. And when you needed to go in the log, it was just huge. And you're trying to find one thing, and filtering wasn't the best back then when we rode dinosaurs to work. Anyway, let's talk about Syslog on Cisco routing and routers and switches for a little while. And what Syslog does for us, as we've seen throughout the course, it delivers messages regarding network events along with a timestamp that can help you determine when the event occurred, as long as the time is correct. Now, these messages can be really helpful in figuring out what happened to your network, whether it was last night or whether something just happened while you were in front of the screen. You just have to remain calm and read the message carefully. And I say that not out of insulting anyone, but out of love for you. Because the thing is, with these messages, some people just tend to see a couple messages pop up and they panic. Now, I still get a little lump in my throat once in a while if I put an ACL or something on in the lab and, all of a sudden I get 4 messages like, oops, I forgot to leave a port open for OSPF, an address for OSPF, or a port for BGP. If you remain calm and read the messages in front of you, it's practically going to tell you how to fix it. Now, logging, again, it's really straightforward, but the command itself, I don't know if I should say it's tricky. The iOS help is a little odd. And looking at the logging options, hostname and trap first, let me go ahead and bring up the live equipment because I want to show you something that is not in my book. I truncated a lot of this after hostname, or actually all of it, because this is a lot of options. And just to be frank, you can go a long time in your career and never use most of these options. There are a couple that are very important that everyone should know. We're going to look at a couple of those here, but after that, unless you're getting into real hardcore logging, you may never actually use the commands. The first one I do want to show you, though, is logging hostname. And if we were sending messages in, and logging is not the right one, you leave hostname out, sorry about that. If I were going to send my messages to a server at 10.1.1.3, this is the command to make it happen. And the next command I would need is logging trap. And that's just saying, okay, here are the messages that I'm going to send to my logs. Now, the syntax here, again, it's not tricky, but it's just a little odd because you got severity levels in one place. You got numbers up here. Then you got a whole row of numbers over here, and then over here you've got words. Which ones do I use, and what do I need? What do I do if I need more than one level sent to my logs? Well, good news. You only have to enter one line for this, and you can use either the words or the numbers. So if you wanted messages from severity level 5 down sent to your log, you would just need to put logging trap notifications or logging trap 5, because what that will do, it'll send all the logging messages of that level and all numeric levels below it. Very important point here. All numeric levels below it to your log as well. So logging trap 5 would actually have the effect of sending messages from levels 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0 to your log. That's a little tip to help you keep those logs smaller, because again, you don't want necessarily just a huge log with every message everything that's ever happened on your network. So we've looked at logging trap, and next I want to talk about the time on these. Because deciphering syslog messages takes a little bit of practice, but not a whole lot. And let's just say that I just leave that out. I do a Control-Z, and that should actually generate a message. And actually I've gotten 2 because it's now saying, and this is an excellent example, you may never have seen that second message before. But if you just look at it and say, okay, system 6, so okay, it's an informational message. It's not saying anything is really wrong. Then it says logging host and then start stop. Well, that's practically telling you what's going on. And it started logging to host 10113 port 514. And that's really it. So we've got that going with, but we need to make sure that we're getting the kind of timestamp that we want. And this one, this is as straightforward as it gets to me. April 1, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:44 actually, and 40 seconds. I like that. You may actually want to add some things to this particular option. And to set that, we're going to revisit an old friend, service timestamps. Then we're going to go log. Then date time is the option we're looking at right here. And with that option comes 4 other options. Local time, MSEC, show time zone, and year. You can put your local time zone in those timestamps if you want. Milliseconds drive me crazy. Some people like them. Actually, I thought it was funny that that's actually the default for service timestamps on this new equipment we bought. I think they did. That just annoyed me. Anyway, we've also got add time zone information to timestamp with show time zone. And if you even want the year in your timestamp, you can do that. I just like a plain old timestamp just like we've got right now. But if you add MSEC, just as a quick reminder, yeah, that won't work. Just as a quick reminder, there are your milliseconds there on the end. So instead of 8:46:21 seconds, it's 21.891 seconds. Now let's look at the other option that we had, and we've got log, and we're going to use uptime. And when you use iOS help to see your choices after uptime, there are no other choices because you don't have to worry about local time or milliseconds or the time zone or what year it is, because when you do this, you're strictly getting a value that tells you what the device uptime is. That's not the best way to have a timestamp for me. And if this was over 24 hours, by the way, you would then start seeing like something like 1D, 3H, 4S for seconds, of course, that kind of thing. I just like the plain old timestamp. Certainly use whatever your company wants you to use, but I like date time here. Again, just a quick reminder on those options, and I'm going to leave the MSEC off this time. And that's it. So now I've got April 1st, 8:47:24, and I just got a message, system message, level 5, and it's telling me right there it's something about the config. So that is really about as good as it gets. Now let's head back to the board for a moment. We just went over that info. Now the switch console, that is set to display all Syslog messages by default, and I kept it that way throughout the course. We haven't done any debugging, but I think we've seen some of just about every other level here, mostly 5s and 6s when we've been configuring. If you want to change that, you can change it with logging console, and that's going to have the same options as we saw a moment ago with the logging host address. And you can put either the number or the word, and again, if you put, say, logging console 5 here, you're going to see messages at severity level 5 and below. Now, as for the internal buffer, there are a couple of things you can do with the logging buffered command. I'm just cooking on all cylinders in that direction. So we've got logging buffered, almost the same exact choices, but there's one difference. You can change the severity level that you're sending to the router or switch's internal log the same way we've been doing it, 0 through 7, or using the word for the appropriate level. But you can also change the buffer size. So if you see logging buffer 4096 or 9192, it doesn't mean there's a severity level that high. That just means you're actually changing the buffer size. We'll see the default for that here in just a moment, because we're going to do a show logging. Now, show log is going to give you a ton of information. It's going to show you first, is Syslog enabled to begin with? It's going to show you that right at the top. Have you dropped any messages? Have you had any stop by rate limiting or flushes, which is something we're not getting into in this part of the course or this course. Message discriminators the same way, but here it's going to tell you, okay, I've got 71 messages logged to the console, and it shows you the level that you've set. And again, these are the defaults: buffer logging, level debugging, 71 messages. and the size is 4096 bytes by default. And no active modules, and if you hit enter one more time, it's going to start showing you the messages. And we've got a couple, one or two, I think, from a previous lab. Here's the RSA key size message we were sent during that particular video. We were talking about SSH and Telnet. And there's the message we saw at that time. Remember that SSH 1.5 has been enabled. And it has not been a month since I did that video in real time, by the way, because I know the eagle-eyed amongst you were saying, hey, wait a minute, these messages are from March 1st, and, these other messages that we've just looked at are from April 1st. I'm going to fill you in on that at the end of this video and in the next one. But you see here, the clock was changed. Here's a clock update message, that kind of thing. Shows you some up and down ports, that kind of thing. There are the logging messages that we got. So it's all there. So let's see, we've done the internal buffer, shown you the log settings, everything else. There's one little trick I want to show you. I know we're hitting 11 minutes on the vid, but it's a good little message here. Let's say that you're working on Fast01 and we do a shut. There we go. I was waiting for that message. And then a no shut. Now we've seen these throughout the course, and you've seen these throughout your studies. But you may not want to log these. And let's just do a show log. Should have done a filter to get down there, but that's okay. And you see down here at the very bottom, here are 4 messages regarding one interface. Let me highlight the first one. There's the first one, change state to administratively down, that kind of thing. Well, that's kind of mundane, and that can be mundane too in a home lab. If you're sending your log messages over to a server for later analysis, do you really want these log messages in there every single time about, link status changed because you closed an interface, then you reopened it? Let me show you actually how you can get rid of that. This is an interface level command, and I want to show you the options here for logging event. Now we're on a multi-layer switch right now. Of course, these will be different on a router, but the one I want to show you here is link status. And I'm going to do a Control A to move to the front of the line and then put a no in. So I've got no logging event link status on that particular interface. And let's do a shut here. And I'll take a sip and let that work. And I don't see the messages that I would usually see. And let me do a no shut. See the console message that I expect, configure from console by console, and I don't see anything else. Let's check the log real quick. And if we go down to the bottom, you'll notice that these are the link status messages we got a few minutes ago when we did that the first time. But the second time we did it, we didn't get anything like that. That's what the no logging event link status command does. I really like that, especially in a lab environment, because you can end up opening and closing interfaces, and then when you go back and you look at your logs later, it's just filled with, link 5 changed, line proto 5 up down, link 3 up down, line proto 5 up down. If you want to keep those messages out of your log, just go to that interface and run no logging event link status. I tend not to run the others because I want those messages, but if you go into your multi-layer switch or your router and you see some messages you don't want, there's always a way to filter them from going into your logs. Takes a little experimentation with the syntax, but you can definitely get there and fine-tune it, because again, whether you're working in a production network or whether you're working in a home lab environment, the trickiest thing about logging is getting the information you want without getting it overwhelmed by the information that you don't really want. And this is one excellent way to keep your Cisco router and switch logs down in size a bit. Now, about that time, we were talking about this. We had some log buffer messages. I guarantee you that I have done these videos all within a 24-hour stretch. And these all had March 1st timestamps. And the ones that we did in this video all had April 1st timestamps. So what is going on with that? We're going to talk about it at the beginning of the very next video and talk about how to synchronize our time across the network, which is very important for our timestamps. We'll get started with that at the beginning of the very next video.